I've prepared 3 sheets of the deckled edge paper. They are 1 centimetre shorter, both length and width, than the outer cover of the journal. I've measured nice neat measurement for where my sewing stitches are going to go. I take a punch and punch through the papers so that when I come to sewing, my needle will pass easily through the hole. I get a good strong linen yarn and start at the back, because that's the bit that isn't going to show. You can take 1 stitch across and then knot it at the back. Doesn't matter if it's untidy at the back of this. Then go through your holes all the way through to the end. And then if you want it secure, you can do a stitch back through the holes, coming up and across over your empty spaces, and finish off by tying a knot. That way your papers are really nice and secure. For the journal, you'll need pieces of good quality cardboard, just bigger than your prepared inner sheets of paper, and then you need a piece of the same cardboard which is just as big as your binding for the paper that you're using, so it's just ever so slightly larger. Using good quality PVA, place your boards onto a piece of newsprint scrap paper and apply the glue all over the board, right up to the edges. And the same with your spine. Get your piece of fabric that is just bigger than your boards. Place your board facing down onto the fabric. Pull the fabric so that it's taut. And same again, but leaving a space for your spine with just a little lip to allow for flexibility. And then again, pull the fabric tight, and not too tight, just enough to make sure it's nice and smooth on the other side. The next thing is to put glue onto the edge so that you can pull your fabric over. Make sure it's right over to the edges. And then for the corner, you want to cut in but remain a few millimeters away from the edge, and then cut off the excess. So do that on all 4 corners. So now all 4 corners have been folded over, the glue is down, and you start pulling this over. Again, reasonably tight. Doesn't matter the excess fabric here, because that comes, we'll cover that up afterwards. To the other side. Then let's come to this edge, get rid of that excess. And the whole idea is that these corners should just glue in to that corner and make a lovely, I'm going to put that more at an angle. They should pull over and make a lovely neat edge there. Doesn't matter so much, it's only the first centimetre that has to be really beautiful. The first centimetre along this edge, because I'll show you in the next Tuesday tip what to do there. I'll just repeat that on this side. Just pull it over nice and neatly. And then when this dries, it'll sort of shrink wrap it a bit. So you turn it over, it got stuck down to the paper a bit there. You can just rub that off with a rubber as well. And just make sure that it's all smoothed over and nice and tight. It will shrink a bit too when it dries because it's all wet. And then I paint it. So now you've got a lovely board with a hinge into which you will attach your papers. Cover that I made last Tuesday tip. The idea is that the paper that you stitched, which was also included in the tip, goes inside to the very pliable spine of the book. However, I don't like it if you just stick this down like so. My plan is get a piece of fabric just bigger than the papers, and we're going to cut little notches out of it. So on either side of where the actual spine is going to be, just take little notches out. This is simply so that the fabric folds down like so. So again, I'm going to mark the other end. So I'll make that just slightly larger, and then this end I'm just going to take notches out like, oh, right up to side to where it's going to be, there and there. Okay, just cutting the notches out. So you end up with a piece of fabric with notches taken out of both ends, just so that it folds over nicely like so. Then these bits I'm going to cut at a slight angle away from it, and you'll see why later on. So I'm just going to do all 4 of them. So you end up with a piece of fabric like this. Then you get some wallpaper or some fabric that doesn't fray, and you cut a piece that is the same length as your papers, plus your spine, plus the length again of the other side, with a bit of extra because you can trim it. And you cut little pieces that are the width of the shapes that you've made with the little notches. And the idea of this is to make a really nice, neat, so that's the same fabric as you used at the back, is to make a really nice, neat spine. Get your glue and spread it onto the back of your pieces of, I've got just wallpaper here, and stick it down to the back of your fabric, taking in that little fold so that folds can come down as well. So fold that down nice and neatly and flat like so, and then fold this over, and then what you have is a nice neat little spine. So I'm going to do it the other end. So now you've got an extra internal spine that's fabric onto which you can sew your papers. So your fabric piece doesn't show from the back. You slightly off center this because there's going to be 2 lots of these 6 sheets of paper, so one side by side. Start at the back with a knot, go through the holes you've already made and sew it through. Now you can pin it first if you want to, but I'm just going to sew it through using the old holes that I'd already made. The idea is that then it's actually sewn down onto the spine, and there's no way it can come off. Mine isn't as neat as I could do because I'm hurrying it for you lot, and possibly because I'm not very neat in the first place. Right, so now you've got the first one sewn onto the fabric, and you can knot that off, and this then is really securely fixed to this bit of fabric. And I'm going to do the next one, so I'm going to put it up against the fabric, find the hole and make it as parallel to the last one, because remember you measured them out. So go to the center, through the old holes, and then take it through the fabric on the back again. So try and keep it through the whole of the actual paper, and then through the fabric nice and close to the other one, but giving it enough space to move. Right, now you've got the 2 sheets sewn onto its own fabric spine, and it's this that you stick onto the spine of your book. It's finished off with a little bits of wallpaper, so it will look neat, and it's that you stick down. And what happens after this stage is that is stuck down, which will take some time. I'll show you me doing it, but obviously it's going to take a good while to dry, good 12 hours. And you stick that down to the spine, bung loads of glue in there, and then once it's stuck down to the spine, not before, you take these flaps of fabric and you stick them down. So the whole thing is really secured onto your spine and your cover. And then the piece of wallpaper that you cut then goes over all the blemishes and all the cuts and fabrics and loose ends, and gets stuck to both sides of the paper, and you get a lovely start to the book. But I will show you this gluing stage first, and then next Tuesday's tip will be applying the paper. So I'm just going to glue this up. So I'm literally going to cover this with glue. Okay, and now this gets stuck onto the spine, so make sure it's nice and central. You can fold the spine up, the spine and the cover up, and if you look down the actual edges of the spine, you'll see it's all nice and neat, and that papers are sitting nice and snug against the spine. And just get something, I've got an old paintbrush here, just get something to make sure they all go down on both sides, and you should have a nice neat finish to it. Right, I would leave that to dry now and not fiddle with it. Don't put the paper in it until that is dry. I mean this paper, and I'll show you that next. So this last lesson is just how we finish off the journal so that you make it nice and neat and interesting, and very, very strong. There you go. I've painted the outside of the journal just with acrylics, and you paint around the edges because the piece of paper that you cut in the demonstration before gets stuck down and you get really lovely little neat edges. I've got this beautifully stuck down, it's all really firm. I'm going to just get rid of any lumps or bits that I don't like, and I can take some of this off. I don't need all of that, but what that fabric does is really, really hold that booklet down. So with my good quality PVA glue, I'm going to make sure that that fabric is really holding it down. And really, once that's done, the thing is not going to go anywhere. Then, with a piece of fabric that you cut before, put it onto the newsprint and glue it. Make sure there's glue everywhere, and particularly right up against the edges. This is wallpaper, so it's really thick, good quality wallpaper. So in fact, I can sponge off the glue, because I'm so clumsy with this sort of thing. I can sponge off any glue that I get on it, and I'll just show you. It's lovely textured wallpaper, and you can do really nice things with it. Glue it all up right to the very ends of it. I demonstrated how this piece of paper was cut in the previous Tuesday tip, or in the previous part of the video if you're watching the video. Okay, well there's tons of glue right to the very edges, because it's really important it sticks neatly down onto the edges. Put that to one side. Bring back your journal, make sure it's all nicely stuck down on the one side that you're working on. Right, get your piece of paper that's heavily glued, lay it nice and neatly so there's an even edge all the way around. Press it down into that corner. Make sure you've got a lovely sharp line where it folds into that edge. That'll provide even more support to how well fixed your actual paper is into the journal. Then, using your scissors, just cut off the excess, but try not to mess up the deckled edges too much, because they're nice. And you end up with a lovely finish to the inside of your book. And then you repeat the same on the other side. Just so that you witness me doing the last bit, I'm just laying the piece of paper that I've prepared with already glued onto the back of the journal. I'm going to fit it into that corner so that it's tight, but it leaves room for the book to actually move, like when it's wide open and closed. So you have to give it space to actually open and close and move. I should be able to just lay this over, spread it down, and then cut off the excesses again. Go around the nice little deckled edgy bits. I can tidy that up when it's dry. But there you go. Any bits like this, which could be just a bit neater. And just see if I can make that edge a bit neater. There you go. When I have glued this paper on, I dry it flat. If you dry the glue when it's closed, you'll find that this may well rip. So dry it flat so that this is at its most open and it gives it some flexibility. That's what I'm trying to say, without putting too much tension on this join here so it doesn't rip. So you end up with a really nice journal, lovely hard back, hard cover. The sheets are really nicely fixed in. It all looks really nice and it's finished off nice and neatly. You can put a little notelet here that says, you know, to so and so and from so and the date, or belongs to so and so, or return to such and such a body when if it's lost. All the bits are really beautifully finished. You know, they're all nice and neat. It looks very professional. And last of all, I just wanted to show you that you can paint this wallpaper really nicely because it's responds because of its texture. So I've just got some acrylic ink here and I'm using it pure. I thought I was going to dilute it, but I tried it and it looks lovely pure. And look what happens, it sits in the grooves and patterns of the wallpaper. So parts of the colour, parts of the pigment are actually resisted and other parts are absorbed, and I just love it. So I'm just going to paint that up, paint the inside just to finish it off. So in the end I chose to do a red and blue inside cover reflecting the red and blue on the front, and all blue at the back reflecting the blue at the back. And that's it, finished. Very unusual handmade journal.